What's up guys, today we'll be going over all the grenade launcher changes. As you see, I pretty much have every grenade launcher in the game ever, so we're going to be testing all of them. If you don't know what the changes are, here they are. Aggressive frame grenade launchers, aka the 150s, are now rapid fire frame grenade launchers. Rapid fire frame grenade launchers have had their damage reduced to account for the rate of fire 0.8x, but now also have increased reserves. So pretty much what that means is 150s always did the same amount of damage as 120s, but now their damage will be roughly 80% of what it was to be more in line with their rate of fire. And finally, the last note, damage to major enemies and above by power weapon grenade launchers reduced by 10%. So that's going to be every single power weapon GL. Then the 150s will be hit twice, first by the 80% of the original damage, then also the 10% on top of that. So let's go ahead and start with the 150 RPMs, aggressive frames. And for this video, pretty much every single grenade launcher I'll be using in this video except Exotics and Wendigo will have spike grenades on it, which is pretty much the most important perk on any grenade launcher to increase its damage. So all of the ones I'll be using will have that on it. So looking at the damage on Greg with a 150 spike, it's going to hit roughly 22,760, but after the changes, that should drop all the way down to 16,387, which is going to be a huge drop off for 150s. Also, for all these different grenade launchers, I'm going to test 1 magazine and 2 magazines for DPS to show off their burst and also their sustained DPS. So 1 mag took 1.702, which means after the change, the DPS over 1 magazine will be 48,140, which is still going to be decent, but as you can see, that's going to be a huge drop off from what it is right now at over 66,000. 2 magazines will take a little bit longer, 5.355 seconds, which means after the changes, it's going to drop all the way down to 30,601, which is pretty far drop for a heavy weapon. Also, the total damage output will be changing quite a bit. Right now, we hold 21 ammo, and that will result in at least 344,000, but as they said, they're going to increase the reserves, so that should be going up by quite a bit. You can also get full core on 150 RPMs on Love and Death with spike grenades, and that's going to increase the damage even further. So looking at the damage increase of full core on Love and Death, max range, as you see right here, it's going to hit quite a bit more. Right now it hits for 26,425, but after the changes, I'll drop to 19,026. And since the rate of fire and all that stuff is going to be the same for this grenade launcher, looking at the 1 mag, that'll still be just under 56,000 after the changes go through. Then over 2 magazines, it's going to drop off quite a bit, and now it'll only be 35,529. So overall, 150s are getting hit very hard, and they're not going to be quite what they were before. They're not going to be that crazy burst DPS monsters. Now looking at the 120 RPMs, once again with spike grenades, these ones are only getting the hit of 10%. Look at the damage on Greg right now. We're going to hit roughly 22,218. So 150s actually did more damage right now than 120s, which made no sense. After the change, they're going to still be hitting roughly 20,000. Look at the first magazine for DPS. Takes 2.035 seconds, meaning after the change, it's still going to be doing almost 50,000 over the first magazine, which is still actually pretty good, and actually a little bit higher than the 150 over 1 magazine. Now, once again, going over the 2 magazines, so 10 shots. It's going to take a little bit longer at 6.14 seconds, meaning the DPS over 2 magazines is still going to be 32,567, which once again is slightly higher than the 2 mag for 150s. 120s also hold 1 more ammo at 22, which means just under 440,000 total damage output, which we can't really say that's going to be more than 150s because of the fact that we don't know how much more ammo the 150s are going to be getting, but I'd probably assume that it will be more damage. And just like the 150s, you can also get full core on the Domesday, which is the Reckoning 120 GL. And at max range right now, you hit 26,150, but after the change, it should be 23,535, which is actually still pretty good damage. So at max range with full core, the DPS over 1 magazine will be almost 58,000. Then with 2 magazines, it's still going to be pretty high at 38.3 thousand. So full core at max range with 120 is so far the best DPS option. Obviously, while we're talking about 120s, we cannot forget about Wendigo, which is the pinnacle grenade launcher with explosive light, and it's pretty much one of the best all-around grenade launchers in the game, and 120s seem to be better than 150s now, so this should be pretty good. First, looking at the damage without explosive light, it's going to be roughly 18,000. Now with explosive light, it's going to go all the way up to over 30,000. So looking at those numbers right there, they should only be getting hit by that 10% nerf. So it still should be hitting almost 27.5 thousand with explosive light. So over 1 magazine where all 6 shots will be with that explosive light, that takes 2.519 seconds, meaning the DPS over 1 magazine still after the change will be 65,493, which is really high and pretty much the best burst for 1 magazine. But now if you do 2 magazines where the first one will be all explosive light and the second one will be with no explosive light, this is where the DPS of the weapon will really fall off, taking 7.241 seconds, meaning the DPS over 2 magazines is 36,155 after the changes, which is actually not that bad compared to a lot of the other stuff we mentioned so far. Wendigo can also hold 21 ammo, I believe, yep, right there, which means after a change, still 410,000 total damage, which is pretty much right up there with all the other stuff we mentioned so far. Maybe some of the other 120s might be a little bit higher. If you guys didn't know, there is also 100 RPM GLs. None of them have random rolls, they're all old ones. This one, which was the Iron Banner one, happens to have spike grenades on it. So let's go ahead and see what this is about. As you see on Greg, right now it hits 21,845, which after the change should drop to 19,661. Now looking at the rate of fire over one magazine, it's going to be the slowest of them all, and it's going to be a 6 magazine, taking 3.17 seconds, meaning the DPS after the change over one magazine is going to be 37,213, which is really bad for one magazine of a GL. So I'm just going to save your guys' time and not even show off any other numbers with that, just don't use it. So we pretty much have gone over all the different legendary GLs in the game, and now we only have the exotics left, Anarchy and Prospector. So first looking at Anarchy, if you shoot 2 shots at any enemy, you're going to get the max damage possible. Then it's going to take for pretty much 10 seconds on the dot. So looking at all the different damage and adding it up, then also tracking how long it takes 10.5 seconds pretty much on the dot. So Anarchy does a total of 168,000 damage and should be dropping by that 10%. And if you divide that by the time it takes, it does roughly 16,013 DPS right now. That should be dropping to 14,412 DPS after the change. And finally, we have the Prospector, which is a 165 RPM, so pretty much the fastest RPM in the game. And it's a hit kind of weird. It does a lot of impact damage, but then also does tick damage. So it hits roughly 22,902, which after the 10% damage reduction, it should be 20,618. And look at the rate of fire over one magazine, so 8 shots with full auto. It's going to take 2.803 seconds, meaning DPS over one magazine after the change should still be 58,846, which is very high. Not quite as high as Wendigo, but now over 2 magazines shooting off 16 total shots, it's going to take quite a bit longer. 7.157 seconds, and this is where Prospector will be king. Over 2 magazines, it still does 46,039 DPS after the change, which is going to be pretty much the highest of all GLs. Also, it holds 22 ammo, meaning really good total damage output also, as you see right here. So we just went over quite a bit of numbers, so recapping a few important things. Right now, 150s are way better than 120s because they do the same amount of damage per shot, but they also shoot a lot quicker. But after these changes go live, the 120s will actually be slightly better than 150s across the board. If you just have spike grenades, 120s are better. If you have full court, 120s are still better. Then Wendigo, which is a 120 RPM, is also going to be the best burst damage in the game for any GL. Over 1 magazine, it is the highest. But once you get to 2 magazines, that is where Prospector will be the best bet. And pretty much everything else just falls off and is roughly at 30,000 DPS. So it's not really worthwhile after that first magazine for pretty much anything besides Prospector. So the power weapon GLs are going to be even more burst weapons than they already were. The thing before was they were really good for burst damage, but they were also really good for that sustained DPS too. And most of them over the entire reserve still like held like 45 to 50,000 DPS. But now some of the really good ones are still going to be doing that one magazine DPS of like 50,000. So they're still going to be really good for that burst damage. But once you get to that second and third magazine, that's where they're going to really fall off now. And the other options in the game, for example, Whisper, that is where Whisper would be really good. So just looking at these numbers and what I did with my sniper video yesterday, both Prospector and Wendigo will be really good for that one magazine DPS if you just need really quick burst damage on a target. But once you get past that first magazine, that is where Whisper will be just better straight up for that sustained DPS. So it's going to be kind of hard to see where these GLs will be worth using, because of the fact that if you don't kill someone in one magazine, you may as well just been using Whisper anyways. So I can see GL still being good for things like strike bosses and some of the 3-man activities, but pretty much for every raid boss and things like that, I think Whisper will just be the king. Also, I'm interested looking at some Anarchy combos. Anarchy plus Sniper combos won't be as strong as they are right now, because Anarchy and the Snipers are both getting hit. But I wonder if like Anarchy plus Mountaintop will be good again. So I definitely need to look into a few of those different combos. And I think I want to make a video tomorrow talking about where I think the meta will be going. But as of right now, I definitely see Whisper being the best for raids. And I still think Geos will be fine in 3-man activities. Anyways, like I said, I think I'm going to make a full video about where I think the meta will be going next season. So I'm going to save more of that conversation for that video. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about these Geo changes. I think they're fine. Geos were definitely very strong for a very long time. And this nerf won't necessarily destroy them. They're still going to be good for that burst damage over one magazine. Both Prospector and especially Wendigo are going to be really strong over that first magazine. Wendigo doing almost 67,000 DPS. But they just won't be the best option period across the board. And now once you kind of get out of that burst damage area, some of the other options in the game will actually be worthwhile and not just GLs for every situation. Anyways, I think that's all I gotta say. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.